Hello and welcome back to Media Studies Live. I'm James Brown. Hopefully not garbled this time. I'm here with my regular sparring buddy, Savvy Reyes Kulkarni, feedbackdef.substack.com.
And Feedback Def on YouTube also.
What do you got cooking on YouTube?
Oh, I just a couple things. I just posted some long form music discussions. I was talking for like a fucking whole hour straight about Ronnie James Dio, Black Sabbath, Rainbow, the band Dio, heavy metal icon. And then I started a new series with a good friend of mine who's a theologian. So we talk about spiritual matters. I'm about to start a series with a former editor of mine who is a Frank Zappa fanatic and is like super opinionated. He's been canceled before. He plays drums. He thinks the Grateful Dead are pussies. He just like unleashed all this. I was like, dude, we got to do a show. So I'll be doing that sometime soon. I have a ton of other stuff. I have a long form video in the works. Do the white Karens that run music journalism have jungle fever? I think I've mentioned this before. That's the sensationalist clickbaity title. That's in the works, and yeah, so a lot of stuff.
I also have a theologian spiritual series in the works as well. I'm doing more work on third places, not home, but third places, those places that we share, public places. In most cases.
I heard your first clip of that, or your most recent one, and I realized I don't have a third place anymore. For years, I haven't had one, so
it's troublesome. I think most of us do not have third places. I think that most of us yearn for them on some level. They yearn for a place that, that it's the Cheers thing. It's where everyone knows your name, where you can just walk in, you can grab a coffee, you can grab a beer, you can go bowl a game, and people know you, they recognize you, and you can have moments of empathy for them and have them for you.
Well, it's troublesome that I wasn't even aware enough to be troubled that I haven't had one since 2020.
Terrible. And I think that's true of most Americans.
Like it didn't even occur. I'm troubled that I wasn't even troubled. You know what? Now that I think about it, I kind of do have a third place though. I pick my daughter up from kindergarten twice a week, every week. And on one of the days, I get to hang with the dads. And then on the other day, I get to hang with the moms. And that's basically we just chit chat for an hour while the kids run around. So that's kind of a third place.
And for our viewers and listeners, give me a thumbs up or a comment. Make sure that we're coming in clearly. I was garbled earlier. I apologize for you guys who came back. So
let me see if it's I should be able to check it on my phone.
Yeah. So we're gonna check that real quick, and then we're gonna get going.
Yeah, let me find you. Here we go. Let's see. Can you say something?
Onomatopoeia.
Sounds
ABC.
Good. Sounds good.
All right. We're gonna get rock and rolling, and I think we begin with a clip. Lex Fridman. He interviewed Tucker Carlson. This caused all sorts of waves. He got a lot of names hurled at him because of Tucker, largely, and because of his recent visit to Russia. But I don't find the interview itself all that interesting. There were moments that I enjoyed, and I found some of the discourse really interesting. But as a larger thing, other than a piece of candy, a piece of content that we can, devour and enjoy and move on from, I didn't find it all that remarkable. What I did find remarkable is what Lex said prior to the content. Much like Tucker and Vladimir Putin, the preamble is way more interesting than the actual content, because it says a lot about where we are and where we aren't. in terms of media, in terms of culture, and in terms of how we do things like Sabby and I are doing right now. We are creating a piece of content. It's not an adversarial piece of content, at least not from my perspective. But there's a wide belief that every piece of content must be adversarial. And that's what Lex is going to share with us. In a moment.
Please allow me to say a few words about the very fact that I did this interview. I have received a lot of criticism, publicly and privately, when I announced that I will be talking with Tucker. For people who think I shouldn't do the conversation with Tucker, or generally think that there are certain people I should never talk to, I'm sorry, but I disagree. I will talk to everyone, as long as they're willing to talk genuinely in long form for 2, 3, 4 or more hours. I will talk to Putin and to Zelensky, to Trump and to Biden, to Tucker and to Jon Stewart, AOC, Obama, and many more people with very different views on the world.
And I think that point, especially that last piece he did, he mentioned there about being able to talk to, both Jon Stewart and Tucker Carlson. Those two are rivals. They've been rivals for 2 decades, traveling this parallel role in society over the last 2 decades, both heightened roles in society over the last 2 decades in one degree or another. It seems like when one is up, the other's down. It's very interesting, those two career tracks and the two ways that they've intersected over time. The willingness to talk to people who you disagree with, who have fundamentally different opinions than you, is increasingly rare in this day and age. It's why I enjoy the Lex Fridman podcast. It's why I think that in many ways he's a throwback. It takes a non-trained journalist to bring back, whether it's the Larry King School or the Charlie Rose School or the Tavis Smiley. You could go back to Edward R. Murrow. It's not that he would not prod. It would not that these characters would not push or prod. They would. But they seek first to understand and hear out the people that they talk to first. Sabby, any thoughts?
Definitely. Yeah, right there with you. By the way, your beard, you are looking like a host, like the classic hosts. I love it. Mine looks awful and I got to go. I wasn't planning on being on with you today. But looking good, looking very hostesterial or whatever, the magisterial host. Definitely. I wasn't aware that Lex was catching flack for doing this. It surprises me from what I would expect from his audience, or maybe it's not from his audience. But it is interesting that probably anybody would get it from multiple sides, right? For speaking to any figure. So the people who are the people who are opposed to your sort of ideological angle are going to give you a hard time. But then the people who are leaning your way but go further than you probably wouldn't like it either. I always want anybody I agree with in an interview to not realize I agree with them, because I want anybody I interview who I admire, whose views I'm on board with, to walk away feeling like, man, that felt like a fucking cross-examination. What the fuck? So I'm coming at it from a different, and I also want every interview subject to walk away feeling challenged, but in a way that they feel good about. That they're like, oh wow, that was like, they don't feel demeaned or disrespected, but challenged. Lex is getting at that in what he said, but I don't think he has the pitch arsenal to throw curveballs and changeups in a way that yield a really fruitful discussion.
Go on.
Well, so full disclosure, I was working PR briefly for a musician artist who. So I've emailed the Lex Fridman podcast because this musician wanted him to know that he was an admirer and he maybe wanted Lex to at least hear his song or consider playing it. And I admire Lex for being curious and for being open to talking to a range of subjects, but I don't think he has the. It's odd. I think Joe Rogan is a more reliably curious and open mind than Lex is. Lex kind of filters those conversations through his through the framework of his training as a scientist, and I find that ultimately limits. He brings interesting things to the table because of that, like recent. When Sam Harris was on with him, they're talking about consciousness and stuff, but it doesn't extend beyond that for me. Whereas Rogan is less pretentious, and I think Rogan is a messier interviewer. And I've complained to you before that I think can be sloppy.
Sure.
Can be. Sometimes he's amazing, but he doesn't bring the same consistency of preparation that I would like to see. So he ends up empowering his accusers of him being just a doofus who he ends up muddying the waters by not being precise. But because he doesn't have these imposed barriers on his thinking, he is much more free to roam with people. So I don't think Lex, he doesn't throw the pitches I like. I equate interviewing to pitching, and you got to change your pitches and you have to change your arm angles too. It's a very guileful, there's a lot of guile involved in this. And I want somebody to open up, but feel great. And also feel like, man, this guy was really pushing me, but I'm walking away feeling good. I want them to walk away. I don't want to give them the opportunity to stay within the same rhetorical trench that everybody gets into who speaks publicly over and over and over and over and over. They say the same types of things. I want to get them out of that so they have to map out a new neural pathway to answer my questions and to be like, wow, that was really, I got out of myself a little bit. That's what I ideally want.
For me, it depends on the type of interview. You don't, I've done lots of very, very short interviews. And as a daily news reporter, you jump in and you get in a scrum many times. You have one or two questions and you can knock someone off. You try to knock them off their spot, which I think is sort of what you're getting across with the neural pathways description that you were sort of describing there, where you want to push them or throw something at them that's unexpected so that they can hopefully open up. The trouble is, I don't think that what most people are expecting are what I am describing there, or what you're describing there, or what Lex is describing there. Most people want, especially, and I think he goes on to explain this pretty well, especially when it's someone who they are not politically aligned with. They want you to operate as an attack dog. And I think that's a pitch that I had, and I have. I'm certain that you have it. I'm not sure Lex does. Rogan, every once in a blue moon has trotted it out. But that's the expectation from some, that we attack first and don't care about understanding, because we already understand. There's this faith that whatever your dogma is, whatever your ingrained belief about a person is the truth. It is unquestioned in that we should simply just get in a trench warfare type interaction with a person. And that's what I found remarkable about his statement here is he's like, hey, I don't care. Like I want to understand. I don't care about your need, your bloodlust for trench warfare in the culture war. I want to understand who I'm speaking to. I want to know why they're doing the things they're doing.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do that, which I think is laudable. But I don't think he has the. So he's more of an agreeable personality. He doesn't have the switch to go from that to pushing back.
Sure.
And so he doesn't really. Somebody can go on there and just kind of say whatever they want, and he'll just. Yeah.
Here's what my feeling about that, and I totally agree with you. But we allow that pass for people who, and when I say we, I mean the royal we. I don't mean everybody all the time. I've listened to Joe Biden get in interviews and say things that were blatantly false. I heard Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez a few days ago say that there was no migrant crisis, that it was totally made up, despite the fact that the mayor of the city in which she represents literally declared a state of emergency. He's cutting daycare funding. He's trying to find billions of dollars to take care of all these people. But hey, there is no migrant crisis. All right. And she was not checked. All right. We're not checking everyone for being wrong or saying something that is wrong. We're only checking people, as Lex explains,
when you have a partisan interest in doing it. Yeah, when you have a
partisanship.
Yeah, when you have a partisan's bone to pick. And we're writing from that perspective all the time now. And in some ways, Substack has been a good thing, but in this regard, it just allows people to do that more, which is they were escaping from a mainstream journalism environment where that was way too commonplace. It was so pervasive. So it's really hard to find people who don't do that. I'm just a fan of not broadcasting your position right off the bat in the service of a fruitful exchange. I like to play devil's advocate a lot. And so he is just more like, I'll just go soft on people. You know what I mean?
Fair.
I'm in it just as much to challenge myself as I am the other person. And I don't see, people, the appetite for that is just nil. It seems at this point.
I want to play a bit more of Lex, and before we move on. Go ahead. Devin.
Well, I was going to say, I love the image of you. I don't know how much your audience knows this. You've mentioned this before, but that we all have that like TV image of like a bunch of reporters in the scrum in a press conference, and you've actually done that.
Yeah.
I've only had one experience like that, but I love the image of you. I've seen you, I think, in like a button-down shirt doing that before, like standing behind with like a pad. So I don't remember where I saw it.
Sure.
But that's just so cool because that's just not something you see every day. And for JB's audience, there he is. You know, like that was his beat for a while.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective to see the world, because you get it changes how you see media. It changes how you see politicians, and you get a sense of stagecraft. You get a sense of how the Potemkin village that shapes what we see in media, you get to see a little bit beyond it. And for those of you who don't know the term Potemkin village, it is a sort of a fake world that is created to visualize the message that we want to get across in this case.
Can I ask you a question about that, though? In the
Yeah, go ahead.
context of what you're saying now?
Yeah.
There is an expectation, though, at those people are empowered to push harder. Like sometimes
Yeah.
the tone is antagonistic
Yeah, absolutely.
in those. So that's
Sure.
an interesting contrast.
Mhm.
But the thing is, the politicians, because you were on the political beat doing this, they're so skilled at like
Mhm.
fucking just greasing by, being slippery with those questions that it doesn't even catch them a lot of the time, right? Even when people go for the throat.
It depends on the politician.
Okay.
And I think also you're correct. The skill in the preparation, because I worked on the preparation side as well. So when you are a politician, oh, by the way, shout out to Jacksonville Kid. I did not write It's a Man's World.
It's not the same guy who showed us his dick last time, was it?
No. And shout out to David Diggin also for in the comments there. You, as a reporter, well, it depends on how prepared the politician is. And I've had moments where I was shocked, without naming the politician. There was a scandal that happened at a place.
I think I know.
To be incredibly vague. A scandal happens at place X. And you know, and it's like, oh crap, there's a spate of news stories about this awful thing that goes down. And politician Y is in charge of place X. 3 weeks later, politician Y is at X to lay out that, hey, we're going to give more money to employees at X. And that politician had no sense that, hey, what about this thing that we were talking about here? Like,
check me on this shit.
No sense that we would even bring the concept up. And here's the worst part. A lot of the folks that I was there with, and of course I asked the questions on that, they didn't ask about it. They just asked about the thing that was right in front of their faces. They didn't want to address it. They didn't think about it. And increasingly, what we're seeing with politicians, there's especially local and regional, that there's less of a press on that. And this person was entirely flabbergasted. It was like, why would you ask about this thing that happened here where I'm standing right behind me, less than 30 feet away? Like,
they were pissed, probably, right? They were
not happy. They weren't happy. And their people were less happy.
Is this?
And I worked for a pretty influential, place. So they didn't want the people who would listen to me every day to think about that. They thought that it was over because it was a couple weeks ago. And as a reporter, it is your responsibility that when you don't have an answer for something and you have a shot at the person who might have an answer, who you gotta ask the question. And you gotta keep digging, and you gotta talk to people and try to get closer to the truth. And there's a big growing expectation that just doesn't happen.
This isn't the person that I've joked would have you at the bottom of a river, is it?
No. No.
And that person would not have been as composed handling that question.
No. No. Uh, um. Actually, I think that person might have had it a little better
Okay.
based on the interactions. Yeah. Keeping it vague there for the moment.
Yeah, because you never know whether the person I'm talking about, you never know whether you're going to get a chance to interview them again.
Yeah,
Which I
you
think
never
would be
know.
amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. Broadly, in these moments, what you get is sort of sometimes a one-on-one, and sometimes surprising one-on-one. Like one of my happiest moments is when getting to ask. Is I was the only person who went to this random thing that Senator Gillibrand went to, and I asked her about UFOs.
Whoa. Why did that come up? I mean, what does that have
Because
anything to
she
do with it?
did. Because all right, so she's on the Senate Armed Forces committee,
Okay.
and you know, when you know you're going to have a shot at a politician, you want to dig into what they're doing and what they're thinking about, what they're working on, and um, and I saw that she was on this Armed Forces committee and that she spoke to Congress a few weeks before she was back in town here in Rochester. And I I saw that had wanted a new body created to investigate UFOs because she was being approached by various members of the military who had encounters with UFOs and they couldn't explain them. And so she said, "Hey, I'm going to create this thing." And then she did an interview with some random magazine talking about like, "Hey, we need to do this. We need to protect our armed forces people because we don't know whether these UFOs are real or are they on are these objects on Earth and created by people on Earth who with malevolent intentions, or are these from another planet? Either way, we need to know."
She said that
And
explicitly?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. So yeah, we had about a 10-minute conversation on UFOs.
Okay. So she was receptive. I can see why she
Oh
would
yeah,
be then. Okay.
oh yeah. She was jacked about it because nobody asked her about it, even though she was she had this it's pretty easy to get access to Senate packets and congressional packets and on down the line, Assembly, State Senate, City Council, Monroe County Legislator, town councils. You can find this information. It's public information in most
And
cases.
how far back archived does it go?
It pretty much indefinite.
So I can go find that same
Yeah.
Gillibrand
Yes.
packet of what she released to the. When you say packet, are you talking about?
Meaning these are uh um these are parts of potential legislation, proposed legislation, minutes of conversations that are public. You could go back and get them. And if you can't get them, you can request them. It's what foiling is. And foiling is not a difficult process either. Like you can learn how to do it pretty easily.
Okay, that's going to come in handy. I can tell you why later.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, it's sort of being prepared, digging into who the person that you're going to talk to first, being ready to to take notes and actually have active listening. That's the other problem that I noticed in these scrums. In a lot of cases, not everybody is listening. They come with their one or two questions prepared and want to scream them, but they're not prepared to like actually listen to the answer. Because sometimes in the answer, like, wait, what? Like, what do you mean by that? Like, you actually want to do X or Y or Z or whatever the thing is? And that's That's worrisome about that process. And that's you have to think, you have to be very quick on your feet. You have to be quicker than you do have to be in a long form interview. I've done quite a lot of those as well, but it's a different kind of environment. It's a higher pressure environment. And it's
Sure.
an environment that you can ride the coattails and do little if you really wanted to. Like if you really wanted to do nothing, you could just wait for other people. You can wait for other people to ask questions and and you could just ride their questions if you really, really wanted to. But actually making the effort to be prepared, to be prepared to ask questions and be prepared to prod and probe for more information and more and dig. It's an increasingly rare quality.
So the one experience I had ever of doing something like that was in the late 90s sometime. Magic Johnson came to U of R. I don't remember what the occasion was. And I thought I was about to start a zine then, which I never did. No surprise. But I went, and I don't know how I must have requested that I had a question, and I noticed everybody was taking so long with their questions. And believe it or not, I can be brief. And so watching everybody go, I don't remember what the first part of my question was, but I remember being like, da 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 da. And in your opinion, is expansion good for sports? Our expansion team's good for sports. That was it. It was like, psh.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of just doing like a little burst and just putting it, he gave a good answer. I think I have it recorded somewhere.
Sure.
So, yeah. But totally different. Yes. I can completely appreciate what you're talking about just based on that one experience.
From Jacksonville Kid, the only United States president that was not affiliated with any party was George Washington. And his quote was, "If you divide the country, it will fall, as the behaviors of both parties shows."
Definitely true.
Yeah. Shout out to Jacksonville Kid. Burning up the comments right now.
Reunify Jacksonville. Duval, the nation of the Republic of the People's Republic of Duval.
Yeah. So, Savvy, I'll give you the choice. You want to go deeper on Lex, or you want to move on?
Well, you wanted to play something. I don't want to derail the you wanted to, because I
wanted to go in a bit
curious.
To get longer on this. I think he made another very interesting point, and then we can move on.
Yeah, I'll just get comfortable. Listen to our guy Lex.
I want to understand people and ideas. That's what long form conversations are supposed to be all about. Now, for people who criticize me for not asking tough questions, I hear you. But again, I disagree. I do often ask tough questions, but I try to do it in a way that doesn't shut down the other person, putting them into a defensive state where they give only shallow talking points. Instead, I'm looking always for the expression of genuinely held ideas and the deep roots of those ideas. When done well, this gives us a chance to really hear out the guest and to begin to understand what and how they think.
That was a point that I made earlier. He's simply reiterating. I don't think this is an expectation today to actually hear the people that we speak to. We don't treat them as if they're humans. I think it's the Joseph Campbell line. It's treating people as if they're an it instead of a thou.
Which we're all guilty of.
Without a doubt.
And Lex is right that when you're in the company of someone as a three-dimensional human being, you have an opportunity. You're immediately reminded of the fact that this is a person and you have an opportunity to relate to them. So I think that's very important. And he's right that you don't want someone to shut down. Where I would diverge from him is that there are a number of ways to ask tough questions without getting someone to shut down. And my favorite anecdote is from a book called The Craft of Interviewing, which everybody who does a podcast or wants to go to journalism
Sure.
needs to read this book. It's from, I mean, it's like from the 70s, maybe. It's really old, but it's still current. And my favorite story from that, and I hope I'm getting all the details right, Barbara Walters was scheduled to had booked an interview with Richard Nixon, and his daughter had been, I think, arrested for drunk driving or something with alcohol, maybe put in rehab or something. And so, of course, his team was like, you're not touching that at all. And of course, she wants to fucking know about it. So her first question is, what are some of the challenges facing the American family today? That fucking story has stuck with me ever since reading that. And that's just beautiful.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Again, I might have some of the exact, I think the book is like 10 feet away from me right now.
Yeah.
But I might have some of the exact details wrong, but it's something very close to that. And what an inspiration it was reading that. Oh, cool. You've got it handy too. Nice. Yes. Yes. Can you hold it so everybody can see the author too? Like, order this book. Yeah, that book is awesome. I have the exact same. It's got the same cover and everything.
The Craft of Interviewing by John Brady. It seems to say almost everything to be said about talking to others for publication.
And this isn't just
journalism review.
For aspiring journalists. If you want to know about your family, if you want to do research and you're like writing fiction, even I think lawyers would benefit from reading. Any kind of researcher, I think, where you have to engage with people. It's great. And it's from the era where people would write notes by hand. You know, I mean, it's like tape recorders were new, I think, when that book was written. So great anecdotes. Another really great anecdote. I forgot who it was. Shit, I wish I had looked at the book right before talking. Somebody they had scheduled him for an interview with a head of state. And he was told he would have 15 minutes. So the 15 minutes go by and the guy the king or whatever, president or whatever, wants to keep talking. And the reporter doesn't have any more questions prepared. And he's like, I kicked myself from that moment on. Never again did I not show up with more questions than I needed.
Always.
Just in case.
Always. You want to be over-prepared, not under-prepared.
Right. And that book is filled with blunders like that from people you and I admire. It's like great to hear about their fuck ups, you know?
Agreed. I think that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No. Yeah.
I just a quick anecdote from my example is whenever I do a long form interview with somebody, I'll give you one example. Like I talked to from last fall, I spent a couple hours with the president of the National Funeral Museum. It's one of my favorite interviews I've ever had. And I wrote about 6 pages of questions for this woman. We got through about a half page because her story was just fascinating. And but it comforted it as an interviewer. It made me more comfortable to know that I had a bunch of places I could go if I needed to go. And I could, corral as I understood her story. I corral her as we laid out this sort of labyrinth of her career.
Yeah, cool. It's there's so many. It really is an art. I love that the book is called The Craft. It's a real like working on the craft is super important. I think we should send Lex the book courtesy of Media Studies with James Brown.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
There's a lot of people who could benefit from that.
Yeah, I'd agree. Shout out to DeWont ND for the comment. Where is this man going? I don't know what that means, but all right, man.
And which one of us is he talking about?
Yeah. But before we move on to the next next topic. I want to ask you the question of the hour, which is, how do you define a tough interview question?
That's interesting because I started an interview once right off the bat saying, I'm going to ask you some tough questions. Came in with the high heat.
Mhm.
And I guess it would be something that the interview subject understands is that you're like turning the heat up on them. It's like a fastball up and in. To that, they're gonna be like, well, okay, like you're coming in hot, kind of a thing. Maybe not even antagonistic, but just like, I'll give you an example. I interviewed the drummer from the band Los Lobos, Louis Perez. I love his drumming. I love that band. I think they're one of America's classic all-time bands. That's just me. Another member of the band, his wife had recently been murdered. And I started the interview. I don't remember what I asked, but I started on that subject. He was like, whoo. He's like, whoa. Like, so that's a tough question. Something that is like, you're not disguising, you're diving right into, and usually pretty direct, I think. A difficult subject. What do you think?
I think it's it could be sometimes really simple, and sometimes it could be, sometimes it can especially in talking to a politician or someone who is extremely prepared for it, because I've done that as well. When you spend a bunch of time explaining, hey, this is who this person is, this is who you're talking to. These are all the things that they're likely to bring up. Like, and you spend all this stuff, and hopefully, they spend time, going through that information and being prepared. And sometimes it can be as simple as, 2 thoughts ago, can you explain explain this? Like, why do you, a why can be a ball buster.
Mm-hmm.
To
why, how?
Why and how, certainly, what they're usually prepared for. Why and how, actually explaining the rationale for something.
Can you give us some examples? There's another one.
Those generally, you get looks.
How do you see this working?
Yes.
How do
or
you
even
see?
Or even one that I've also gotten flummoxed. Some, hey, this thing is happening on your watch. I understand that that's the position of you. What are your feelings? Like, do you feel, how would you feel if this happened to your house? For one interview that I remember, I believe it was I was asking a former mayor about a car running into somebody's house. It's like, how would you feel if a car ran into your house? I mean, you're trying to regulate. There's this whole thing about regulating speed in the area, and I asked her, look, how would you feel like about this? And she looked at me, and it was like,
oh, so is that mayor?
And it then went off for about 5 minutes about the state of traffic, like it something that gets, and that usually that they're not expecting, something that gets them to go down an avenue that they're not really, and it's not necessarily an avenue that they can't handle. It's that they're not readily prepared to handle. If you get my drift. Because these people take preparation seriously. They think that they can handle you, And that was one of the things that got it. Also, another interview with another public official. We're talking about a very big project.
Well, wait, the mayor didn't say motherfucker. I live within a gated community. What are you asking me this for?
No. But we were talking about a very big project, and I said, well, you want to do this big project, you want to do yeah, great. You think this will have all these positive effects? Like, are you telling me taxes? Aren't you doing this to aren't you trying to gentrify essentially this area to increase the tax base for isn't that essentially what doing this really big thing
That's what I call a tough question. That's what I call a no bullshit, tough, putting you up against the ropes question. What was the response to that?
Denial. Total denial.
I mean, how surprised do you think they were, or even affronted that you even invoked that term?
Part of the denial was, this is not about gentrification. It was almost a, how dare you bring up this idea that I would do this to essentially my people. And this is about taking advantage of a moment in time where we have blah, blah, blah. We had the opportunity to do something magnificent.
JB getting them on the ropes. Right. So here's...
And then I followed up with so there's no tax benefit to this at all? like there's none of this? This is not about okay, when you build a bunch of new stuff, yes, there's usually tax deals done. But there's no why essentially we don't build things for altruistic reasons. You tell me there is no additional reasons for government to invest. And then that took a long pause. And then went back to this is not about gentrification.
Wow. Man, I wish I'd seen that. That would have been funny as shit to watch.
Yeah.
There's something I do a lot is I'll ask a tough question, but wedged into someone else saying it, so that whatever heat they feel is not directed at me. So what I'll say is someone comes up to you, or you can even identify who those parties are who are antagonistic to them. You know, somebody from the Democratic Party or whatever comes up to you and says, blah, 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 blah. What's your response to that? What do you say to them? And it completely, most of the time, I feel like it works. It's like they get upset, but at that target, not at you.
Yeah, I think it's part of it's just human nature. You're in front of a bunch of people usually, or in a multi-person, firing squad kind of interview circumstance. You're on the spot. You're a little bit more tense. So if you are distracted even just a little, the fire that you might fire back at him won't be as precise.
You're talking about you are on this as the questioner, as the...
No.
Oh, you're talking about them, the subject.
Them. Yes. No matter how prepared they are on the spot. It is taxing.
Sure.
And it's not an easy thing to do.
Well, and the other thing you and I, I'm sure, have both encountered this a lot, is people who are really, on the other hand, from what you're saying, who are really good at always steering it back to whatever the fuck they wanted to say.
Yeah.
No matter what you ask them,
sure,
they can build a bridge and just just be PR for themselves.
Sure.
basically. And yeah, that takes, you have to like sometimes get your garden shears out and cut through that.
Sure. I'd like to make our pivot point here. I think it's a very, and I think this kind of dovetails with my friends Pat McAfee and your boys at All the Smoke, in that it's kind of, Pat McAfee did the opposite of that in this conversation. I don't know how much of this conversation you saw.
None.
I'd like to show a bit of this to you.
James says they're my boys because James is above most sports media. He's into studying it, but he's just like, I don't, that daytime soaps for men stuff doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, and I think daytime soaps for men, I couldn't have said it better. I think I may have said that at some point.
I think I can't remember which one of us said it.
We don't have to even speak. I mean, it essentially is that. I mean, these are these endless conversations about, I think generally pointless subjects.
And always referencing the other people who reference those same things endlessly.
Sure.
It's like when you point two mirrors together and it never ends.
Without a doubt.
It's like that's what we're in now. Holy shit. Because like for every clip like this, there's like, so many other shows will talk about it and other podcasters.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I hate doing this, but I thought this was so juicy, especially from a media studies perspective. I had to go here. This is Pat McAfee. He's on the left hand. He's the white guy on the left hand side of the screen, with Matt Barnes, who's center, and Steven Jackson, who is on the right. That we're on the All the Smoke podcast.
We don't have to even speak names, but you spoke a name and called out someone a suit. I mean, the courage to do that, and you got a lot of, you already had respect, but even more respect for doing that. Has there been any backlash, any conversation? Because like you said, there is a give and take and a tug between what people hung their hats on for years and made a lot of money and what is coming and what it's going to be.
Okay, before we go, is that a tough question?
No, it sets him up. It's sort of setting him up with some, not flattery, but it's kind of like greasing this wheel a little bit, I think. Didn't that sound that way to you?
I think he did. He sandwiched a tough question in between. All right. Pat McAfee is in business big time with ESPN. Pat McAfee has been at war with one of his bosses at ESPN. His name is Norby Williamson. He is a legendary figure at ESPN. James Andrew Miller, who literally wrote the biggest book on ESPN, those guys have all the fun, said that the world could end and there will be cockroaches and Norby Williamson will still survive at ESPN. This guy he has survived every reconfiguration, every layoff group. He survived, survivor. He has now rose to being the third or fourth most powerful person in the company. And Pat McAfee comes in and he called him out by name because Norby Williamson, about 2 months ago, leaked some information, according to McAfee, to the media about how his show is doing. It was very incomplete information, but that's what McAfee claims. So let's take his response here.
I don't know if there was any conversations that happened behind, obviously. So, I thought that was a warning shot to that guy. I didn't even think that was
Direct hit.
Yeah, because I'm the I'm the executive producer of my show. I report directly to Jimmy and Bob. So I'm not really viewing anybody as, like I saw everybody like Pat calls out his boss. I don't got a motherfucking boss. What are we, like, what are we, Jim Pitaro? Are we talking Jimmy Pitaro or Bob Iger? Like, is that who we're talking about? Because those are people that could technically be described as my boss. And like Burke Magnus as well. And I have a great relationship with him. But I think even Burke would say, like, yeah, like we have a good relate. Like we are talking like this as opposed to like this. And so that was just a warning shot to, I thought, a person that was, at the same, which is hilarious because he's the former president of the place. I guess a lot of people had a lot of fear of him. I did not. Like,
Right.
I do not have. That guy left me sitting in his office for 45 minutes. No showed when I was supposed to have a meeting with him. Right. When 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever.
No showed.
No showed. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
And you remember that?
what's that?
And you remember that?
This thing's a fucking elephant brain,
There
buddy.
you go.
Okay. One moment. I found it really interesting on a number of levels here. A, you're a guy. You go to the internet. At one point, Pat McAfee was begging to get hired by ESPN.
This is well
he-
before his ascension as like one of the hottest commodities
Yes.
online. Yeah.
Yes. Begging to be, let me call Monday Night Football. I am an internet star. Let me, I could save it. Please, begging.
What are you basing this on? Like his own?
His own statements
Okay.
and reporting on it.
Okay.
All right. So we have both reporting, and we have McAfee admitting that, hey, I wanted to call Monday Night Football. They were looking for Monday Night Football hosts. Monday Night Football was a mess. That's why they spent a mint on Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, and just sort of imported the Fox broadcast because the ESPN was terrible at Monday Night Football, and he thought he could save it. And this was before, obviously, as you said, before his crescendo as a YouTube host. And then you get to a point where you are given nearly $100 million to come in and be the future of ESPN broadcasting. And one of the guys who totally rejected you, who humiliated you, left you in his office waiting for 45 minutes, is now calling you out in the media.
Well, didn't he think that he leaked details that's what like to undercut the show?
Well, yes. Okay, so to explain a bit more of the McAfee situation, McAfee's show is both on YouTube. It's on YouTube podcasts, and it's simulcast on ESPN Prime. So it's #1 channel at 12 noon. So there were complaints that he was not reaching the same kind of audience that they expected for the amount of money that they invested in him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only kind of analysis that could come from probably a dozen people at ESPN would have the balls to put out that kind of information to certain media reporters. And I think when you have someone making so much money, to have the guts to do that, which, I mean, it embarrasses your bosses who made this massive investment in him. It endangers your job.
I was going to ask you, how does it benefit whoever said that?
Well, the idea is that Norby's the king of SportsCenter, which McAfee replaced, and which is something that sort of still exists on a certain level. but it's not as strong as it once was. It's not, I at one point, watched it ridiculously, a ridiculous amount. Why would you? You can find the highlights on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no fundamental need for it. Therefore, but it still has a ton of real estate on ESPN because you have this giant network that's on 24 hours a day, and you need to fill time.
How does it
24 hours.
do in comparison on their, like, as far as their audience, specifically over the air? How does it do in comparison to McAfee's show? And if, like, I mean, because I'm trying to fathom what Norby. We don't even know that Norby did this. Do we?
I think it's pretty clear he did.
Okay. So what is the end game? To try to get SportsCenter back in that slot, or to just?
I think he looks at guys like McAfee, guys that have as much control as he does. Stephen A. Smith has control, but he doesn't. Like, he's got people inside the organization have elevated him.
Stephen A. Smith doesn't have nearly the leverage that McAfee does.
Because McAfee could go on YouTube and be fine
and quit today
and have $100 million deal with
another
FanDuel or DraftKings. He had one with DraftKings, I believe.
Right.
And he could get another one tomorrow. Like, it's Stephen A. walking away. Yes, he has a podcast. Maybe, but McAfee's done it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes.
All right. And I think there's a big difference there. He can walk away. He owns everything. His show will look different. He pays his producers. Like he brought his producers with him. He brought his cast of characters with him. He brought his fans with him. So he can walk away and be unscathed. Maybe even be better.
Yeah, you sound like a robot. We understood what you said, but yeah, it sounds pretty. Let me play it for you. It sounds like the beginning of the Beastie Boys Intergalactic.
I'm sounding like a robot again.
Not so much now. No, it's a little bit. It's better. We'll get through it. It's okay. I think we'll.
Okay, I'm sounding like a robot.
Not a little bit. Now we can understand you more. Now you're halfway. It sounds pretty cool.
Okay. Halfway.
What did you just adjust?
I didn't. I think I hit my mic. But which is kind of scary because this is an expensive mic. But I do have a warranty, so I can get. It's a long one too. So. Come on, get your shit together, Electro Boys.
There goes that sponsorship.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so but to ask your question about SportsCenter ratings, I think SportsCenter rises and falls with the news cycle.
Okay.
So it's safer. Like, it's just like it's a neutral. Like, it's not dynamic on anything. I think at times it'll do better. At times it would have done worse.
Okay.
There's no right answer. And you end up with an average just in the middle. And it looked like from the information that was leaked that they focused on the negative of McAfee, not the positives.
Okay.
The positives is that they gained a bunch of demos and lost a bunch of demos too. So like that's what happens when you transition to a new show.
Okay. Hey, why don't you try muting your mic and unplugging and plugging it back in? Now it's back to really robot. I could understand what you were saying, but it's like MF Doom up in here.
MF Doom up in here. I should have talked about Most Def as MF Doom.
Do you have a different mic even, or a headset or something?
Of course, I have different mics. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's still an issue, and the further back you get from it, the more intense it is. Yep, yep. Still really intensely.
Okay, let me try. This sucks.
And this is different than the way it sounded before. That was chopped up and sped up. This is like the vocoder.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I have an idea.
I wonder if it has something to do with I don't know. Yeah, I can't quite hear it. Thank you, Rob Walker. We're on the case. Yeah, sure. I'm going to tell the story of the time I had an anxiety attack while doing an interview at an interview subject's house. It was for a local seniors magazine that gets printed up and put in the supermarkets here. It's called 55 Plus. And I was interviewing this super interesting guy who taught classes. We have a senior classes facility here. I forgot the name of it. And they taught a lot of interesting classes like Arabic and local history. I mean, it was like really, really cool stuff that people would come in the daytime and check out. And I did a piece on this guy who would do these local tours of like historic mansions and stuff like that. And I went to his class and I went to his house to interview him, and I had this anxiety attack where I thought my heart was going to stop. And so I start freaking out inside. I'm going, I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of an issue. And he gives me one of his beta blockers, which
Wow.
I take. Now
Wow.
you sound great. Now you sound great, by the way, which I take. And my mom, who's a nurse, scolded me after. I was like, Jesus Christ, Sabby, you can't be taking people's medication. So I take the beta blocker and I do the interview with him. I finish the interview lying down on his couch while he's sitting in a chair. And that's my Woody Allen moment. Yeah.
Well, dang. Thanks, Rob. Yeah. I'm glad you're here, Rob. Yeah. I can actually talk again.
Rob, you're hired as the media studies tech.
Yeah.
But yeah, that really happened, and it was hilarious to me even while it was happening.
Okay, so all right. What was his reaction?
He was totally cool with it. So, well, I could give you a beta blocker. When I thought that over and we talked it over, and ultimately I decided. I mean, he said so. He told me that he took them for public speaking. They were a really low dose, and whenever he got like nervous before public speaking, he would take them. So it was prefaced with that, and I felt fine afterwards. But yeah, there I was on my back, continuing the interview in his apartment in this high-rise building on East Ave.
Wow, that's very cool.
And then when I went to his class to listen to it, so prior to that happening, I interviewed him before his class, and there's all these other seniors in the class, and all of a sudden he stops talking And he goes, "Oh my goodness, I just forgot what I was going to say. I like, am I having a stroke or something?" And we go, and I'm like, "Are you sure you don't want me to get somebody?" We go through with the interview. Then he teaches the class, and I'm sitting in his class, fucking white knuckling it, thinking, I don't know if this dude's about to have a fucking stroke here, or whether I should get up and tell somebody, "Hey, this happened. You deal with seniors here all the time, just so you know." It was fine. We got through the class, nothing happened. But so there was 2 events like that. The first one was scarier because the other one, even though I was scared, I had an anxiety issue since 1993 from smoking too much pot. And so I can be in it and sometimes think this is ridiculous. I know I'm not dying. I've been to all sorts of hearts. Like I jokingly refer to it as my imaginary heart condition. And it's happened a lot on online interviews too, but I can power through it whenever it happens. I've never had to stop an interview other than this one time. But yeah, that really happened.
I don't really have anything kind of remotely similar when it comes to interviewing people, except for one thing. Oh, there's only one. So I caught COVID last summer, and the symptoms hit me mid-interview.
Damn.
My heart was
Yeah, you told me about this.
and I was just so yeah. Yeah, this was, and I was talking like this the whole time. I went and I rewatched it. I don't ever want to put all that out there ever again. You're frozen now,
I am.
Zabby.
I am here.
You're frozen. Yeah. So yeah, you're frozen. Yep.
Hold on.
Now I can hear you again.
Okay, but is the picture still frozen?
Yeah, but yeah, that's probably the freakiest interview circumstance I've had, which was sort of like my entire body was just like sweating. I was dripping wet. Your picture's still frozen. So want me to pull you out and
Yeah, and pull me back in.
you want to go back, come back in?
Yep.
Damn it! It seems like every time we get okay.
Might be my.
Okay, I'm back.
How's that? Am I still?
Yeah, no, you're back.
Okay, it's too bad my guy wasn't there with one of his beta blockers for you.
Yeah, man.
That sounds horrifying.
Yeah.
See, when I have anxiety episodes, I imagine that's happening and it's not actually happening. Most of the time, my heart. But if I, God forbid, my heart started racing, that sounds really, really like that is my ultimate nightmare, actually, for exactly what you went through to happen.
And I usually wear a Fitbit. I actually lost it the other day, but I usually wear a Fitbit. So it monitors my heart. And it's usually, I don't know, 70 something. It was giving me a reading as if I was running while I was sitting in this very chair.
Kudos to you for finishing.
Yeah.
But I don't know that was the right choice, to be honest. I mean,
well, it
worked out.
Yeah, it worked out. And also I feel like it's a work ethic thing. Like I want to grind through what I'm working on, whatever I'm working on.
I admire it for sure. No, I totally get that. It's a good thing that sounds, you got to wonder how many people these kinds of things have happened to since COVID and since the side, to whatever degree the side effects of the jab itself with the spike protein, getting into people's other systems in the body. It's just, wow.
Yeah, it is a question that I have. I did get the jab. I got 2 treatments. The part 1, part 2. I wonder what the effects of COVID would have been on me without that. Would it have been exactly the same? There was a big long distance in between because I didn't catch it for what? This was 2023, and I in summer 2023. It hit in early 2022, 2020. So for
Or even
about 1
before, or
year,
even slightly before. Some people,
or-
I have a friend
yeah,
who thinks he got
actually
sick before that. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, by the way, that was one of my favorite moments in recent internet history. Fannie Willis.
I'm not familiar.
Fannie Willis is the DA down in Atlanta who was charged with getting Trump up on for the election, that infamous call.
Yeah, right.
She hired her boyfriend to be the lead attorney on the case
Mm-hmm.
without telling anybody that it was her boyfriend. Her
Yeah, I
boyfriend.
saw this.
I'm just explaining for the crowd here, for anyone listening, that this boyfriend was being paid much more than any average attorney in the DA's office, and her dad testified,
Mm.
and she said, and he was like, I knew what COVID was, and I think it was 2018. Like in the middle of the trial, he just goes there. Well, I knew about COVID. It's like, what? You know about COVID? I knew what COVID was in 2018. And that I have friends in Africa, and this was part of the testimony. It just cracked me up. Man.
Wow. Truth is stranger than fiction to the nth degree. Now we're constantly seeing examples of that. This is the woman who sort of melted down and made it like a racial thing when she was asked about it. Is that, yeah. Okay.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And everybody, thanks for coming back here. I know I had the technical difficulties. Shall we continue a little bit?
Yes, because I'm curious what you're.
Okay, here's a bit more the McAfee perspective.
The face of white supremacy.
I got everybody's. Yeah. He also banned all my friends from coming on my show. So there was a ban of ESPN talent on my show on YouTube that came directly from him, which so much so that I started a hashtag ESPN stinks the day that everybody got banned from my show. No, I trended for like 8-9 hours or something like that. And then that's the next day is when I met Jimmy Pitaro. Jimmy Pitaro called me and said like, hey, how do we, what's the deal? And I told him about, you guys are banning my friends from coming on my show. Matt Hasselbeck worked at ESPN, Jeff Passan worked at ESPN, Dan Orlovsky worked at ESPN. All these people that I've known since before they got into ESPN, like they're not even allowed to come on my podcast or whatever, or my YouTube show. You guys banned it. So like that guy was not a fan of me or our operation for a long time. So then whenever ESPN signs us and he runs SportsCenter and our show is now in place of SportsCenter at noon, I'm a fan of SportsCenter. We all watch SportsCenter. I grew up on but there became like a war almost from behind the scenes from like SportsCenter people and like people that have been in ESPN a long time against us coming in and taking their jobs and all this other shit. And I didn't see it like that. We were like pumped that we made it to the big leagues. Like, hey, I'm pumped that we're on the worldwide league. Like that's how I viewed it. And this is what I'm talking about playing a checkers player. Like get the ESPN deal done. I'm like, this is awesome. Like we joined the ESPN team. So lucky to be here. We get access. And then immediately it's like, this guy sucks. This guy's ruining ESPN. And it's not coming from people outside ESPN. It was coming from people within ESPN. And I did not expect that at all. So I immediately like, okay, I'm in war. Like if that's what we're doing, we're in war. And then once you start learning about how shit's going behind the scenes, things that are being said to people, things that are being leaked, the timing in which they're being leaked. It's like, oh, they're trying to kill me. Like they're trying to make our show impossible to advertise with. They're trying to make sure people don't watch our show. So like, as I started learning that, I'm like, all right, well, that's not going to, I don't know how this has gone in the past with other people.
It ain't going here.
But yeah, this particular white trash kid from Pittsburgh, like, hey, Suits, this is not how this is going to go. So that was just a warning shot. That wasn't even like supposed to be, and then obviously it goes big. And I heard from, this is no lie, no less than like 40 people that have worked at ESPN or used to work at ESPN. And they were like, thank you for saying what you said. And I was like, well, if I really crafted a statement about that, I mean, I could have said something much better, but I also did not appreciate the thing I didn't think about. Once again, Checkers player, I did not expect the backlash afterwards. Like Burke Magnus just became the president of content at ESPN. I think he has a great vision for what the future of sports media should look like. He was a big part of us joining ESPN. People were attacking Burke because it made him look sloppy because it's inside the building.
Right.
People were attacking Jimmy because it looked sloppy. And that was something that I did not think about. I was very apologetic about. Like, I didn't mean to take down my allies or make allies look bad in the whole thing. But I genuinely did not expect it to get as big as it did because I didn't think I said anything. It was like that crazy.
No,
you know
kept
what I mean?
real.
Okay. There are two elements of this, and I can let him go from here, that I find interesting. Both Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson still collect checks from ESPN. They do it at the pleasure of several of the people that Pat McAfee has mentioned here.
What do you mean at the pleasure?
Meaning they could these are freelancers. They could be fired in a moment. Without, they wouldn't have to pay them out. They could just drop them. The fact that earlier we talked about the freedom that McAfee has. McAfee could walk away and be fine. This is now freedom on a much lower level employee, essentially, in Barnes and Steven Jackson. These are freelancers. They could bring on one of the biggest stars in that company to talk shit about a guy that they have to deal with. What this says to me is that we are in a different era than whence we came, where you could just openly say, really, fuck my boss. Like you were just speaking the truth about my boss, and you can trash him all you want. And we got our podcast over here. We're working with Showtime too, because if we lose ESPN, we're okay. So I find that fascinating. Any thoughts on that?
No, other than the headline would be ESPN gets cucked. And you saw what I sent you, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you see this a lot. So this tone has been there for like decades in music. Although the circumstances are different, it's not an apples to apples comparison for where we are now with media, with podcasters vis-a-vis networks and artists, even where Prince was with Warner Brothers. But just this tendency to like sort of bite the hand that feeds. I understand McAfee feels he was done dirty. Maybe he was by one of the ESPN brass, and he's like, yo, what the fuck? And I understand he has all the leverage in the world. But my issue is more with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson's tone. Like, they're not asking tough questions. They're just presuming that, well, he's the athlete and he's railing against corporate, so he must be right. Is their tone. Maybe in this case he is right. And I absolutely think he had nothing to apologize. I was happy when he didn't apologize for what Aaron Rodgers said. I was very happy when Aaron Rodgers doubled down. Fuck you, Jimmy Kimmel, by the way. And the fucking whole posse you rode in on. Fuck them all. But so I thought that was a hill to die on. But then he kind of turned tail and Aaron Rodgers was gone in like 2 days. So how much, like, I don't know, a lot of this bluster, like these guys are sitting there like they're Che Guevara and Fidel Castro representing the new regime, but they're in bed with Brezhnev or whoever was president at the time or prime minister at the time. They're totally like, they're not like on their as like out on a limb with this whole rebel shtick as they claim to be, or as they.
So this is posturing.
Yes, I think so. What do you think? I'm just thinking off the top of my head here.
Well, I do think to a degree you're probably right. That this is posturing, that this isn't like we're not at the fully realized version of this yet. And maybe they're not, maybe it's not them, you know? Maybe they're not the ones who are going to be the full-on representatives of this new system. Maybe it's a generation down the line. I think of someone who has spent a lot of time breaking down in recent months is Draymond Green and Draymond Green's relationships. He is in more of a partnership approach with the media companies that he's worked with. He's held a lot more control than most athletes, most people who worked in media, including myself, have ever held on to. Perhaps they are canaries in a coal mine, seems a little strong, but perhaps they are group one of many to come, where we look at media and media figures is more like we look at musicians, like you said, where it is you are able to freelance, you are able to, you can, even if it is, a fake rebel character that you are that you are playing, that you have more control of that persona, and that could be the future of media, where we're coming. And I think this is where it connects with the Lex piece of the puzzle for me, in that he's choosing, as he shapes his online world as a totally independent content creator. He makes plenty of money. He has companies and he works at MIT. He does not need this, but he has created this thing that he can operate independently in any way he sees fit. I see the Matt Barnes and Captain Jack there as people who want that, who don't have it.
It's interesting because, well, for one, I don't think they were that pointed in what they said about Norby. If you really listen carefully, they were
still
being supportive and affirming, but not. They didn't go over the line with Pat McAfee. They expressed empathy for how he would feel. I don't think they were. It seemed to me they know where their bread is buttered. Maybe you got a different impression, but just from the way they tiptoed, like you said.
Sure.
And also when Matt Barnes was asked on Dan Le Batard's show about this whole fracas between Mike Epps and Shannon Sharpe, which was eventually resolved, but this was before it was resolved, he made it a point to say he admires Shannon Sharpe's podcast, Club Shay Shay, but said several things like, oh, well, we think there's room in this space for everybody. We don't go about things the same way. Like he was basically kind of throwing shade at it, which made me think that I don't know if they're jealous or what, but why? It's like, yeah, we totally admire the work they do over there, but we're in a different thing, and there's room for everybody, and we approach things differently. And it's like, that sounds like code for for we're not fans or something, you know. It struck me as kind of odd thing to do.
Well, I think there's a entire 3 hours I could do in this question here, but I won't. I'll try to do this in short. I think there's a ton of jealousy for what Sharpe has pulled off in the last couple of months with Monique and with Katt Williams, and the fact that he has sort of morphed into, I don't know, podcast Oprah for the Black community.
Isn't he one of the biggest podcasts in the world now? Even beyond McAfee?
Hard to say podcasts. Certainly he's doing incredibly well on YouTube.
Okay.
Podcast is kind of hard to say.
Or online presence?
I think that's probably a stretch too. And but in terms of impact, he certainly made an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's but the question is, how long does this impact last? And I think of Andrew Schultz's phrase, the Rogan effect, right? You go on Rogan, that it's kind of the way like the old Tonight Show effect with Johnny Carson, or the old Oprah effect. You go on this show and you see a bounce that is across the board. And the only show these days that has that power is Joe Rogan. I don't think he's in that stratosphere. He does seem to have found his way into the step below, which is high praise.
Sure.
How close? I mean, your top end Rogan, you're talking, 13, 14, 15 million downloads and viewers. A hybrid of the two, because he's talking. It's been very interesting because Rogan has returned to YouTube, so we started to see his growth transparently in a way that we haven't seen it in the last
4 years.
5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
at least 3.
Yeah, at least 3, and he is bigger now. Like it is clear he is much bigger now. If you looked at the old jumps in terms of within 24 hours, what kind of viewership he would collect on YouTube back then versus now, it's not even comparable.
Interesting.
YouTube is bigger now. YouTube is bigger now too.
Yeah, but I wonder if he has benefited from being suppressed to a degree.
I'd say so, and by being behind this walled garden on Spotify, where yes, he could take arrows, but like it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
In the controversy of the last few years, the fact that he could have that whole fracas with CNN adding a weird tone on his Instagram video during the early days of the pandemic, and that he could go through all of that and still have it really not affect him.
Right.
And fans could still get him. And YouTube couldn't have made any of the decisions that they would have likely made in the early pandemic days, as he talked about ivermectin.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he was in this place where he had a shield and still has that shield, by the way, it allowed he couldn't have been disappeared, if you get what I mean. They couldn't have just memory hold him.
Of course.
So I think those are things that get there. Also, I think, I mean, I mentioned Oprah. She does interviews now and again. She still has a book club, still has an online presence. By the way, I love the fact that she had to quit Weight Watchers' board because she took Ozempic. That's hilarious. But she's off the stage. Dave Letterman's off the stage. Jay Leno's off the stage. Ellen DeGeneres is off the stage. Matt Lauer's off the stage. Larry King's dead. Who else is in position to take that spot as the place to go when you have a new thing? I mean, you could talk to Michael Strahan or George Stephanopoulos on Good Morning America. You could go to the Today Show, but those platforms have all shrunk.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think those people have the characteristics that it would take to be sort of a much one of those people that's really in your living room, like the people you mentioned, like a Larry King, or there's something, I don't know, there's something that I think confining about being on the platforms they're on. They don't become fireplace. They don't come into your living room with you. I don't have a fireplace, but like that kind of thing. It doesn't translate for some reason, I don't think. And for Shannon Sharpe to get bigger, if we're keeping it 100, he's got to not just have black guests.
Yeah.
Or target that demo.
That's a very, very good point. And I wish I would have made that one in my spiel there, but I think that's absolutely correct. I think that being the black Howard Stern, for example, with, that's what Charlemagne the God was called often. That's limiting.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Rogan, the white anything. He is just Joe Rogan. You need to transcend genre. You need to transcend demo. It's a really hard thing to do. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of luck.
For anybody, right? Once you sort of get down a track, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
It's hard to put out a country album, Beyonce.
Yeah.
After you've been known for anything. By the way, I like those songs. I tried to do a live reaction to it, but it was too fucking slow. So
I haven't listened to it at all. The girlfriend said she hated that Texas Hold'em song, but other than that, I haven't heard anything. I mean, what was your reaction?
I liked it. And I think that what I was going to say in my reaction video, she has a way of being. Look, as far as like pop juggernauts go, if you're gonna put a bunch of like fucking gigantic Titanic pop figures on the menu, I'm gonna go with her because she sounds very polished, but there is a real organic musical quality to what she does that I don't hear in a lot of these other people, and I certainly don't hear it with Taylor Swift. She's got charisma in spades. It kind of like, up the ass, she's got charisma, and, out her ears. It just exudes from what she does. Yeah, she's making these huge, massive, it's like, these pop stars, it's like watching Godzilla put on a fucking cooking apron, right? It's like they're so big that the things they do are oversized. But she has the most grace, I think, in those kinds of things. And I thought it sounded like a nice gospel-y roots tune. Like, this has been done before, right? This is not so shocking. She did not sound like an interloper to me, copying country music as a cosplay. And listen, fucking pop country is the least authentic shit you can find in music, for the last 20 years or more. They sound more fucking bubblegum and ridiculous and full of shit and like posturing, like they play into the stereotype of country. So for somebody else to come on, she's not doing that. She might have a cowboy hat on in the picture. She's not. If you listen to the song, it is not that. It's not appropriation. So I liked it. I thought it was cool. I don't even know her stuff. Dude, there's a guy that works at the 7-Eleven. Shout out to him. Down the street from my house. He often gets told that he looks like Andre 3000. He cries whenever a Beyonce song comes on. He was telling us at the online. He was telling us the other night, like we were in his line, a register line, that when the Super Bowl commercial came on with Beyonce, he started crying, and his mom was like, "What's up with you?" He's like, "I don't know, Mom." And I think I made him mad because he's really into Beyonce. He plays Destiny's Child in the store, and I love it. I'm always asking him what music he's playing. There's like a live Destiny's Child song was like, "Hit me 2 times, then hit me 27 times." I don't know if you know the song, but anyway, he had a cape on while he was. I'm not making fun of him. He's a character. I love talking to him, but I think I made him mad because I said, "Oh, so if it's between your mom and Beyonce," he goes, "Oh, that's my mom." And I think I don't know if he was on some herbal stuff or what, but
He probably was.
he did not take kindly to that suggestion. But I was just like kind of, because I was like, "Oh, you love Beyonce so much," but he's like a super fan. I hardly know her stuff, but every time I've heard it, I'm like, she's not just pop bubblegum. There's a substance there to her. There's a real presence to her that I admire, and I'm hearing it on this tune. And people need to fucking chill the fuck out, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, when I listen to it, I'll do a review.
Please do. Maybe we should review it on the next time I'm on here. Because do a live react or something.
Sure, let's do it.
I was very impressed by what I heard, and I'm not grading her on a curve either. I just was just like, "Oh wow, this is pretty cool." The thing I don't understand why Joe Rogan and Shannon Sharpe's people don't get him on the Shannon Sharpe on Joe Rogan's show, or vice versa.
They're trying. And Rogan. I don't think Rogan's people would try. It's kind of like Rogan doesn't need him. He needs Rogan.
No, but it would be fucking dope if they got him on. I'm sure he would want him on. He's not just concerned with like exposure. I think he would think it's an interesting conversation. I wonder if Shannon Sharpe has an ideological resistance to being on there.
Maybe, but that's another layer that I had not gone. I'm glad you touched on that, because I think that matters a lot. And I think that speaks to the modern version of the character that the characters we talked about earlier, whether it was Oprah or Larry King or David Letterman, back on the Johnny Carson, Ed Sullivan. There's so many of these figures that have filled our lives over the ages. And in this era, you need an ideological bent.
You need John fucking Oliver.
It goes back to it goes back once again to Lex Fridman and his argument. It is difficult to distinguish yourself in this flooded media landscape without having some kind of perspective ideologically.
Sure.
And Rogan's, as he's described it, his fan base is where the meatheads and the potheads meet.
Yeah, I think it's a little unfair because he's a lot less ideological than he is branded.
Sure.
Or
that he's even branded himself.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And it would be very unfortunate and I think foolish. Like, I could see why Shannon Sharpe wouldn't want to go on Tucker Carlson. But he should go on Rogan. And I think it would be a beautiful, it'd be cool to watch. I think they'd be a really great conversation. I would expect. Or fuck it. If Shannon Sharpe doesn't come, just have Joe Rogan invite Jason Whitlock.
Well, I'd love to see that too. But I think I want to. The other half of that thought came through. I don't think there's much depth to Shannon Sharpe as outside of celebrity gossip in sports.
Well, it just clicked. I disagree, but it just clicked. You could be right. You could be right. Maybe I have high hopes. It just clicked. He suffers from this Lex Fridman same thing syndrome.
Oh,
He has said, and he's getting grief for it. So this is the thing you didn't talk about, but he's getting a shit ton of backlash now from comics who you do not want to be responding to with anger, and because it's just going to come after you harder. The more they sense blood in the water, they're going to fucking come. And his thing is, well, I'm just going to let Katt Williams unpack all his grievances without challenging him. He's getting the exact same pushback. I can't believe this didn't occur to me. He's getting the exact same pushback as Lex Fridman. Why don't you take these people to task? Because they're saying things about me on there and you're not fucking checking them. And he's like, well, listen, you come onto my show and and Marcellus Wiley has now been making regular appearances on Dreamers Pro. That's how you know Dreamers Pro is on the come up. And he's like, Marcellus Wiley's was like, I was afraid this was going to happen. And Marcellus Wiley's like, well, I understand. Because from someone else's point of view, you got people coming on slandering other people and he's not pushing back. He'll let, I think he said hello to Katt Williams. I didn't see this part, but I think he basically said hello and Katt Williams just fucking went off. Like didn't even have to ask a question, I think is how it started. So there's trouble brewing there.
Well, I think that begs a larger question. I still feel, but I'll stick with the larger question. We can
Right.
do.
You don't think he could do? You don't think he could do anything outside of sports gossip? Or that he'd be good at it?
Gossip?
Yeah.
No.
Mm.
I don't think he's even got the Strahan level depth. Where Strahan could do a serious interview, and he could do something more, lighthearted. He did cooking segments regularly on Good Morning America. He did that whole, celebrity interview thing with Kelly Ripa on the live with Kelly and Michael at that point. And then, of course, he's got the sports angle where he on Fox Sports, where he is an integral part of both the studio team. And I think the thing that he is totally underrated at is his one-on-one interviews with athletes in the field. I think he is like miles beyond just about everybody else.
Yeah.
Fox world. So I don't think Shannon's got that kind of depth at all.
No, Strahan is more stately. You could send Michael Strahan to a political event or like some sort of fundraiser of something he's not even familiar with, but he's polished enough that he could hang, I think, and just say the right things. He's very, very polished. He's very mediagenic. He's trained in that world, right? They should join forces. I think they could kick ass together.
But if you're Shannon, if you're Strahan, you don't need it.
And vice versa. For the podcast world, you don't need Strahan, and for the TV world, you don't need Shannon.
I think that Strahan, if he really wanted to, could drop a podcast tomorrow and be a top, sports podcaster.
Oh, really? Okay.
No doubt.
Okay.
Like,
yes.
I don't.
You know why? Sorry.
Well, I think a lot of people underestimate how many people, the size of the audiences that have seen Strahan over a long period of time. TV, yes, is shrinking in terms of average audience, but the power and reach.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and it's not that Shannon hasn't. Obviously, he's been on Undisputed, and Undisputed, you're on a ton of people. He was on CBS Sports for about 5 years in a similar role to Strahan. But Strahan's been front and center nonstop for about 15 years now.
Here's the other
thing. That's a whole other ball game.
Here's the other thing.
He's presented winning trophy at the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? That's another, like, the volume of eyeballs on you.
Well, maybe he will.
My grandma, when she was alive, my mom and my nieces and nephews all knew who the hell he was. I mean, that is a rare person in this world today.
And let me guess, your mom is not like vibing with all the smoke.
No.
Or even Club Shay Shay.
No. She's no idea. She will watch random. She'll watch random YouTubers talk about the end of the world, though. But that's.
Oh shit! We should have her on. So maybe Strahan will do something after his TV run is over, and he doesn't have to build it now. Here's the other thing that you kind of touched on. The depth of his interviews goes even further than the pivot. Is it what's Ryan Clark's
Ryan Clark
and Channing Crowder and those guys?
The I Am Athlete in the pivot.
Right.
It was an athlete, and they've split off because they got in a money fight.
So Strahan would be more like a Bob Costas, Ahmad Rashad figure.
Oh yeah, I think Costas is probably Rashad got close, and I think if he made the pivot to kind of like the pivot in Burleson is attempting to go to the Strahan route. Nate Burleson, he's on CBS this morning, and he's also he's been rumored to replace James Brown as the anchor on CBS's NFL Today eventually. And if you look at them as they go, he's picked up some of those responsibilities during their broadcast, where he's the main guy throwing in the break, keeping the trains running on time. But to get back to the point, I think Rashad could have made that jump in the 90s. It was a lot harder to do that. You had to be at the Bob Costas level in order to even try it, and Rashad wasn't quite there, and he did some of that. I think that Strahan has the potential if he wanted, and he definitely seems ambitious as hell. He could. I don't think he could quite come for Rogan, but he could be the mainstream media equivalent.
Wow, that's incredible. That's cool. I mean, yeah. I mean, the thing with him so I appreciate, right? Even if he's talking to people like music figures that he's not going to have as much background in. He has a way of being from that sort of morning TV. We're going to jump from lily pad to lily pad, but without doing it in a superficial way, even though we're still on the surface. If that makes any sense. Like he has a way of doing that and not sounding like he's being shallow, and not being shallow. He's asking real. He's what?
He's learned well.
Yeah, no, I think he's excellent at his job. This is interesting stuff. I mean, because what is the mileage expectation on Club Shay Shay? Right now it's number 1 with a bullet, but does it start to fatigue its own following after a while?
I mean, number 1 with a bullet in the podcast world is a hard thing to even like say.
I mean figuratively. I don't mean they're like literally number 1, but they're on there.
It's at a current apex. Like it's now a destination for a certain type of person. They all want it.
Don't be racist.
And people.
I'm just kidding.
For me and other black people, yes, they badly want to go on Club Shay Shay and talk shit for a couple hours and allow Shannon Sharpe to just say, "Oh, okay," and it's what they want. and that's all right. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think we need some stuff like that. I don't think it's but absolutely. So I think there is a ceiling on that to get around to your previous point. It's not that you can make a mint, like Tyler Perry and Byron Allen, two guys I want to talk more about in this forum, have both made a mint after creating stuff pretty much just for Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is all Black people all the time. Before Medea movies showed up and Tyler Perry started doing TV shows, my mother, my aunts, they all had bootlegs. These are church-going women who don't get bootlegs. They had to get the bootleg of the stage show of Medea because they were like, holy crap, this is just for us. And super serving your audience, you can make a mint doing it. That's made both those men billionaires. Byron Allen, he did an entertainer show, this low-calorie show that airs on in every market in America. And he's also just he has been on this quixotic journey to buy a network for money that they don't believe he has. It's one of the most fascinating media stories, honestly, of the last few years. This guy keeps offering to buy networks. Black billionaire. He owns the Weather Channel now. He was a comic who leveraged his comic access to junkets, interviewing celebrities about movies and stuff, into a weekly TV show, which he sold to different affiliates around the nation. Then he leveraged that into creating these really awful TV channels, those .2, .3, .4 TV channels, and really high up cable channels. He leveraged all that into eventually buying the Weather Channel.
Wow. What a boss move that moves.
Yeah. And then I think he now owns the Root too. And he's trying to buy, which I hate, by the way. And he tried to buy ABC. He's trying to buy CBS right now.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's incredible. Yeah, the Root, which I once told you was like if Lena Dunham were Black, she would have made the Root. It's like Jezebel for Black people.
And he's not wrong, ladies and gentlemen. He's absolutely right.
Jezebel, which just died and was brought back to life. Apparently, the thing cannot die, and it was bought by Paste, who I have written for years. Which is I was like about to jump for joy when Jezebel was killed off, and now it didn't even spend a week in the grave. But yeah, so clearly Byron Allen has business savvy or people around him who really know how to leverage, level up. Yeah, probably, but I would think both. That's amazing. That's an amazing story. Holy shit.
Yeah. And so right now in this era, doing that, super serving an audience, talking to people, even what we're doing right now, where we're talking to just people who are interested about geeky media shit to a certain degree and stuff. Whoever's interested in this, super serving those people, as long as that niche is big enough, you can make riches off of it eventually.
Well, I think we're doing it all wrong. I think we need to go after bears, gay men who like beards and sports.
Oh, by the way, I just met a guy who just got back from one of those cruises.
Oh, a story for another day, for sure.
Another day.
I want to hear about that. I want to hear about that.
But, to put a button on it, I think there is a cap on being king of a niche, king of a small pond. You could leverage it more in this era than you could in previous eras. But if you want to be Rogan, you want to go at the king, you best not miss. You gotta broaden out who you are, or you gotta be involved in circumstances that broaden out. who your
See, and
audience is.
it makes
and I
me
think
wonder,
that both have happened to Rogan.
and it makes me wonder what Shannon Sharpe wants, someone in that position, because once you've had a taste of that success, I don't know that he anticipated his show was going to be this successful to start out with. I don't know one way or the other.
Good question. I don't know.
Right. So, but
Good
now that
question.
he's got it, the natural gear to fall into is we'll just keep growing and see what we can see
Sure.
how how high up we can get. And I think there are a number of mistakes that they could make in doing this. So it'll be interesting to watch. It's funny because Mike Epps called Shannon Sharpe Medea in his stand-up
Yeah.
and said he sounds like Medea. And now Tyler Perry is under fire because he has openly said he would use AI because
Of
it's
course he
cheaper,
would.
it's more cost
Yeah.
efficient.
He would. I would once again, that's a 5-hour show on AI.
And
Lots
the
of
black
opinions on that.
the pictures of like black Mark Zuckerberg that AI
Well, yeah, well, I mean, we can't not go there now. Look, obviously, there's something terribly wrong with with their Gemini, and probably, I mean, a lot of these large language models. Look, I think we need, if we're going to do this thing, we're going to have, artificial intelligence based products, we need not to skew them for political dogma. I think that's probably a pipe dream, but that's what we need not to do that.
So AI is already sort of presumptively woke
Yes.
and anti-woke too.
Yeah, and it's got to stop. We need it to be purer. But I doubt it's going to actually happen that way. Well, any more thoughts on AI before I move
Just
to the
just that in my brief recent experience with editing video into YouTube Shorts,
yeah.
I walked away very convinced AI is not going to kill us. Although I think it could accidentally fuck things up pretty bad.
Yeah.
But it is so clunky, and maybe the things the AI tools that are available to us are much less advanced than maybe what like the Department of Defense has somewhere in some server that they're trying to keep from escaping or something. I'm more agnostic now about it being as much of a threat. I think it'll be more sloppy. I think it will ultimately lead to deaths and things like that, and God forbid, plane crashes and all sorts of fucked up shit. But look, man, I mean, autocorrect is flawed. How can anything at
Of course.
more levels of complexity be reliable? Just seeing what it does on the YouTube Shorts end of things, I'm like, okay, this is not nearly as developed as at least I was expecting.
I think we're at the child, like, when I say child, I mean, we're not even talking elementary school version of this thing yet. So that's why I still have more of a fear than you apparently do. I think this is really, really early on, and I think then once this thing moves from crawl to walk, I think this.
Then we're in trouble.
Quick.
Yeah, then we're in trouble. I think it's a horrendous idea. I think it is yet another example of the human species' inability to resist the temptation. It's almost as if we have a death wish to do these things on purpose, to create things that are so fundamentally could knock the legs from under us. I just think it's a horrible idea. But I mean, it is. I use it to edit photos and stuff. It is amazing. too. You know what I mean? So, but as far as like anything creative or anything, it's almost creepy what it comes up with creative wise.
Sure.
There's something
Because
very
not very
it's not.
It's not it is human, but it's not human. There's this
It's
sort of what was it? I forget the name of the phrase, but it's uncanny valley kind of thing. That's where it looks real, it feels real, but you know it's not. It is this sort of it just feels kind of creepy, even when it's
definitely.
done.
Yeah, it's unsettling. It doesn't unsettle me when it edits my photos, though.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed by it. So it's like already. I mean, remember when I jokingly texted you?
Mhm.
I said already Sabby's singing a different tune about AI now that it's his YouTube shorts are popping, right? Like now that my
Sure.
YouTube shorts are like, oh great, it's funny how quickly that you get convenience out of something and you're willing to make the trade-off. And who knows? I'm concerned that what we're not being told is what if they're just using our voices and our faces and what if it is somehow storing all that in some database and it's doing something with it, like using that in
It no
some
doubt is.
way. Yeah, so
It no doubt is.
you're selling it your visage. You're like being a guinea pig for this thing to make YouTube shorts.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. We are absolutely a guinea pig for this thing.
That's fucking creepy.
It's terrifying. Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt.
So, I mean, just for the record, I've gone back to doing my own YouTube shorts. I edit them on my own now. I got frustrated with it after like 2 weeks. It was annoying. It's clunky as fuck. You think it saves you time and it doesn't.
I just saw a new software.
Hopefully it stays that way though.
Yeah, I just saw a new software that I think may get you back on the train. I'd like to put a cherry on this by doing a quick requiem for Vice. Bum bum ba bum bum ba bum ba bum bum bum. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, boys and girls. I want to go back in a time machine just a few years ago. June 19th, 2017. Vice, according to CNBC, just scored $450 million to make the largest millennial video library in the world. The company was valued at $5.7 million. $5.7 billion. Not billion, million, billion dollars with a B. I watched a ton of Vice content. I'm sure many of you probably did as well. But Vice got full of itself. Vice decided, hey, look, we are the future. We are both MTV and CNN for the millennial generation. We are all these things, all in one house. We are Rolling Stone, too. Just like we're all in one. That's what we are.
And Pitchfork.
In Pitchfork. So, fast forward. We're now in the spring of last year. that $400 million or so has multiplied. It's Vice filed for bankruptcy. I'm reading here from Vanity Fair. Fortress, of course, is Vice Media's largest creditor, in possession of an IOU worth $470 million, according to the bankruptcy filing, which also lists debts owed to Pulse Films, more than $20 million, JP Morgan Case, more than $10 million, CNN, more than $4 million, and HBO of about $2 million. Just a little less than a decade later, they burned through virtually all of their net worth. In fact, they were worth nothing.
You mean
So
worth
at this-
nothing last year? They were valued at close to nothing last year. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they weren't even able to make their debt payments at this point. That's why they filed bankruptcy. They had that $400 million that they borrowed, they couldn't even pay any of it back. In fact, the interest accrued on it. Vice, which was considered the future of media at one point. Vice, something that I badly wanted to work for at one point. They did cool shit. And look, this was a company that I still think their Russian roulette series, when Russia first invaded and took over Crimea, it was some of the best journalism I've ever seen. They called it immersionism, where you essentially put a journalist on the ground and you just have them, experience what's going on. What's it like to be in a war zone? Some of the coolest journalism I've ever encountered. But the thing is, they never quite figured out how to make money. They were great at making profit, but never quite figured it out. They are in many ways. They were a new media company attempting to do old media. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, and maybe not adjusting to the changes. I'm asking you.
They adjusted poorly. They had a sense that they were they had a belief that the market would simply adjust to them. That they would have all the eyeballs, they'd have all the young people, and that the market would be forced to come on their knees to them at their terms. And that's just not how it played out, because there were always there's like we mentioned before, Pat McAfee's of the world, the Shannon Sharpes of the world, the Lex Fridmans of the world, the Joe Rogans of the world, even us to a certain degree. Like, and let alone the mainstream world, there were a lot of other people out there who still had pieces of the pie. They thought that they would be able to dominate and that their business model would that they'd be able to scale rapidly, kind of in the Amazon way, and that their product would be so enticing that they'd be able to swallow audience share, and they just never did. Never did.
Yeah, because I'm feeling like they weren't relevant, at least on my radar, for a few years at this point.
Absolutely. I think they fell. I think Vice fell from relevance. Michael Moynihan, I nearly included him in this. His point was he felt the content took a nosedive, nearly, and I think that's part of it, and part of it's the wokening.
I was just going to say, they got partisan. So I've never been a big fan of Vice. I have mixed feelings. I do admire some of the stuff they did. I thought it was snappy. I thought it was hard not to think it was snappy. And I thought a lot of it was incisive. And they also went places even when they were just doing written pieces online, not just video.
Sure.
A lot of their stuff, they went to some really edgy, brave places, but I started to feel like it was like junk food. It was kind of obnoxious. It was they were wallowing in their own edginess and not just tackling edgy subjects with sort of journalistic sobriety. They were like flaunting the fact that it was weird or fucked up, and they were like titillating you with that, and that got old for me real fast. But then, post-pandemic, I noticed they were right on board with conflating anybody who questioned pandemic policy as fascists, and they were like sounding the same bells as like the New York Times and all these other mainstream sources. And it's like, well, you basically got rid of the one thing that made you different.
I think part of it was a generational shift, and part of it was, I mean, they went from a magazine that, in the 90s, they were a punk magazine. They had a few employees.
Gavin McInnes, not an employee, co-founder. Yeah.
But it, well, Gavin McInnes is certainly that's a whole other story.
Talk about hitting a ceiling.
Totally, and honestly, I think he's a character that I'd like to spend a lot of time on. Another point, because I think what's happened to him is interesting.
But he probably thought he had unlimited shelf life to do his shuck and jive thing, and where's he now?
Well, he's on what, censored.tv.
I mean, he's not moving the needle as he once was.
Not at all.
So that's for all of us in this space. Be careful.
Without a doubt. But this was a case where they had a few hundred employees in the early 2010s, and they decided that we're just going to go to 3,000 worldwide.
So that's where that 400 million burned up. I'm trying to do the math in my head, but
yeah.
Oh no, the microphone, shit, the microphone. Yeah, let's pray let's pray to the AI gods.
My mic is gone again.
It's not gone. It's let's see.
What the hell?
Can you speak softly?
Yes.
Let's try that.
Okay. So I'm dismayed by this. Okay, so Fox and Disney, they poured a chunk of this money into this.
Oh no! Fuck! Just unplug it again, and just do it. Just do it, because we got to hear this point. This is important. What you're saying. Still an issue. Are you running anything else on your computer? Do you want to let yourself out and back in and see if that helps?
Sure.
Okay. So I'll just try to talk, I guess. Okay. So we're going to obviously wait for James to come back. Yeah, I don't know for those watching. I mean, if you've been following James for a while, you would know this, but he's been steeped in media pretty much his entire life. I mean, not even just his adult life, since childhood. He's been studying media even before he would have called it that, which is why I remember saying to him once, like, media studies with James Brown. I jokingly came up with that title in a message to him once, and it stuck. And he once seriously, he still refers to me as a culture critic, which I used to balk at that until he said it. At first I thought it was funny. I was like, oh, well, that's, if you think of me that way, that's cool. And then I was like, actually it fits. So But I'm very curious to hear what he has to say about the demise of Vice, and not only what this says about the current state of media, but where he thinks their choices were not sound. Because, like I said, I haven't thought about Vice in several years, and kind of have been turning my nose up at it for a good decade at this point, especially post COVID. So, I'm curious, and man, 450 million, good work if you can get it. Where do I sign to work for a company like that that's going to go bankrupt soon? That'll pay me a nice, cool salary.
How about this?
We're back. JB is
Okay.
back.
Okay. So, I'll back up. Okay. So Vice it is the late 2010s. It is, they've made this massive investment, and they are scaling. And what we learned very quickly is that they don't have a whole lot of cash on hand. Okay. They have all this they have all these loans. They have heavy debt payments and not a lot of cash on hand. Okay. Yes, a bunch of people were overpaid. Clearly, that's an obvious thing, but they don't have much cash on hand. So it's 20 teens. You don't have cash on hand. What do you do? Care to guess?
I don't know.
What would you do?
You don't scale from hundreds of employees to 3,000, but you're saying they already did that.
Yeah, already did that. What do you do?
I don't know. I have no idea. Is it an obvious answer?
Yeah. Well, not obvious.
Take out more money, loan, find more loans.
Well, of course, but outside of that, you look for free money, right?
Sure.
Yeah. They decided to create a cable channel called Viceland.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And with one of their companies had, I believe it was History 2. They took over this channel, and they doubled down on creating cable contract. What do we know about cable in the last decade?
It's been contracting, and also that the things that pop online are not going to be the same things that grip an audience, a TV audience, necessarily.
Amen and amen. Of course. They felt like they couldn't just use their content on cable, but their audience, the people who actually, really love Vice, they really love the content they were seeing online. The cable audience is an entirely different audience.
Right.
But here's the thing about cable. If you could get on a cable dial, especially back in the day, it's less so now, but if you get on it even now, it's basically a sink. You could just turn the faucet, and the faucet will rain out some money.
Mm.
Like, so they did this.
So how do we do that?
Well, we got to make a lot more content first,
and get our microphones to work.
Yeah, get our microphones to work. I have an idea, but I'm working on it.
Don't give it away here.
Yeah. So like you could just turn the sink, and the sink is on, and it rains money. Here's the thing is, they made the move way too late. Cable bundle was eroding. It also was counter to its audience. His audience is online first. It's young people. It's you, me, and younger. So we're most of us don't have cable. So the audience is going to be smaller, let alone it being on this also ran channel. So their ad rates are going to be low, even though they're going to make money on subscriber fees. All right. So they got to keep this afloat while they're hemorrhaging money, and then they soon realize that they don't even have enough. They're not making enough money even off of the cable channel to help float the operation. The cable network continues to hemorrhage, and then we get to earlier this year, where a couple weeks ago they announced that they're going to shut down their website, the hub of all their content, and they're going to lay off hundreds. By the way, the free way to make a bunch of money on the internet is to host a bunch of content and just surf off that content forever. You could just, but apparently it's not worth it to them, which is a very strange choice. Doesn't make much sense to me. And actually, I've had 4 or 5 different people or various media positions that I've talked to who all sort of like look at this as like, what the hell? And even the bosses, one of the bosses at Vice who was talking to an employees during an all employee meeting was like, this makes no sense at all. To rip down all the content and not have a website at all. We could just put up ads and make some money. And your careers aren't going to be, just thrown away. So this, and what brought this to me today is a Vice exec at a town hall a couple days ago announced that they're going to lay off even more employees.
Yeah, no
They
shit.
felt like it. And and then they abruptly ended the town hall, which they did over Zoom, after a downpour of thumbs down emojis.
That's so 2024 to go out like that.
Yeah.
In a hail of down thumb emojis.
Down goes one of the shooting stars of the media world. Now, where do I think they went wrong? Well, I think a lot of places. Part of it you mentioned. I mean, it was political. I don't think the political part was the big thing. I think big ambition gets big investment. It's just the way that works. Like if you are it's the line from The Wire, the bigger the lie, the more they believe. If you're Elon Musk and you want a bunch of governments to invest in your stuff, you decide that you're going to solve traffic. You know what I mean? You're gonna fly to the moon. You're going to solve cars. And car pollution. You're not gonna do something small, something just to keep yourself afloat. You're gonna do something big.
Let's keep that in mind now. That's good. That's advice to live and die by the way.
Yeah. And they did that. I mean, at one point you had Shane Smith, the other co-founder, along with Gavin McInnes, running around saying, "Hey, we're gonna replace CNN, MTV, Rolling Stone, and what was the other one?" Like, so it's like, and all these businesses have been hemorrhaging, at the time he's saying this, and he's like, that's why he turned down something like $5 billion for the company from Disney. He was drinking his own Kool-Aid.
Yeah, wow. That's I mean, on the one hand, it's admirable, right, that he turned that down, but on the other hand, it's just, I mean, they might not have even been in a better, they might still be dying today, but I guess they would have had more money to throw around. It might have taken longer.
Well, I think it would have been, I think of something like 538. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, Nate's
the Nate Silver operation.
Yeah, Nate Silver. Yeah.
A zombified version of 538 still exists. Nate Silver's gone, but it still exists because there's juice in that IP
brand. Yeah,
you can live off the old content, and we could just keep it going. So I think a zombified version of Vice would have existed if they would have done something like that. But if you are not just simply, like one of the greatest versions of this is Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban's broadcast.com, where he was going to solve out of town listening of basketball games. So he basically got the rights to post links to the online broadcasts of other teams' basketball games. and then he sold it to Yahoo for a couple $2 billion.
Wow.
Like,
Holy shit.
like that's how he became a billionaire. That's it.
And God
So-
bless him.
So in terms of the logic of dreaming big and just taking a swing, that they nailed that. But if you're going to operate, if you're going to hold on to the business, you have to actually run the business.
Mhm.
You have to make a profit. If you're going to take out a massive loan, and that's what it is, that's what an investment is. It's a loan. They're expecting an exit. You have to operate it as if it is a company that is profitable, which they never were. Well, never is probably strong. They did have one period where they did very well, I thought, but it was a much smaller scale. It wasn't a 3,000 person scale. We're talking at a couple 100-person scale.
I mean, it
That's a
seems
whole
like
other
hubris. Yeah, it seems like hubris. There was hubris that contributed to their downfall. Now, if they had taken the Disney deal,
Mhm.
that wouldn't have been a loan. That would have been
Yeah.
they would have been bought for. So
And they wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been Vice, right? It would
no,
have
but they
been-
turned into something else anyway. So
And I think I think that says it well. Like, you're going to have to turn into something else. Like, there's no way around turning into something else. You can't keep something pure. And also, you can't. You also can't be, well, I can't is probably strong, but if you're going to be taken over by the asylum, which they were, that's what you're referring to in the awakening. It's got to be something more durable, like the Times. It's got to be something that's indispensable.
which I would argue they never were. They never. They had a profile. They were a brand that people of a certain sort of internet age, like in your generation,
Yeah.
knew them, but they were never indispensable the way certain other online destinations were. They kind of flooded the zone, I guess, if that's the right use of the term, with a lot of content, and you were aware of them, but it was never a place I thought that. I don't think they achieved what they clearly think they achieved. That's my assessment.
I think they did, but maybe this is a generational thing. Maybe this is what were we like? We
10 years apart.
11
We're about 10 years
years
apart, almost 10 years apart.
Yeah. I do think at one point they not indispensable, because I don't think they ever got there, but they became, their name had meaning.
Sure.
Well,
Sure.
most brands don't have meaning.
Hmm.
I think of one of my favorite books, the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. They talk about capturing the audience's mind, the customer's mind. And for a person about my age, there was a time where that was internet journalism.
So this is really interesting because you're familiar with the New York Times documentary Page One, right?
Yes, of course.
So there's that. Do you remember that scene?
Young Brian Stelter, and of course David Carr yelling at the guys from Vice.
Yeah. So okay. So you remember the scene, and they
Yeah.
I guess they go. I forgot which country they go to that's having like a coup or a revolution at the moment. And these two dudes come, and they're talking about the way they do documentaries, and it's really like right there, we're putting you in the action of watching somebody get machete to death. I don't remember exactly what it was, but something like that. And like, oh my God, it's like very lurid, shoving your nose in it. I don't know if it was somebody getting machete to death, but it was something like that.
Okay.
And then they're sitting at the table with that one contributor from the New York Times who had a crack issue. Is that right?
There we are.
Right. And he's like, and he tuts them for a second. And he's like, hey, have some fucking respect. You're talking about the goddamn New York Times. And then the two guys like fall in line. And I remember thinking at the time I saw that movie, what year was that documentary? I just looked it up.
I think about
2012, something like that, 2010.
Yeah, in that range.
2008. I remember thinking that was really lame at the time, and they could have been like, dude, fuck you. Like, we don't have to express piety to your fucking sacred cow. We're doing our own thing. And they didn't do that. And I, as you know, hate the New York Times and never tire of telling people about it. And to me, what's interesting about Vice is they are almost a holdover from like 90s Gen X edginess. But in a way that
Sure.
in the online universe became very noxious. And I think that what we're seeing is that you don't have to choose between overly PC and acerbic, noxious content, that there's a middle ground between the two. And I think people are starting to show, I mean, terrible things have followings, but I think there's an increasing appetite for something that's just substantial, that doesn't get captured by something like wokeness or any other ideology or even anti-wokeness, and is just brain food. That you don't have to be PC, but you don't have to be so obnoxious that you're just like rubbing everybody's nose in shit either. And I thought that's where Vice like overplayed.
Well, this is where we come back full circle
To our guy Lex.
to our guy Lex. And after I saw the Lex statement that I played at the very beginning of our conversation here, I spent about a day or so just thinking about it. And thinking about things like that you just spoke of, like audience capture and ideological capture, and whether it's even possible to operate a media operation of any scale. I think you could do an individual, but scale without it now. And I don't believe it's possible. I don't believe that you can gain a mass audience without some degree of audience capture. And this is where I think Vice chose wrong. They chose the wrong captors.
Like you said, a traditional media mindset in the new media landscape, because they thought they could dictate the terms of what their audience was going to want, just like old networks used to do. And you just turned on the fucking TV and that was there. Whereas here, people are buying in. As you've been saying to me for years, these are your customers. These are people coming into your ice cream shop and buying scoops of you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you run out of the flavor they like, you're going to fucking hear about it.
And if you bet big that you'll have endless amounts of the flavor that they like and you run out of the flavor they like, you're going to go belly up. And you're going to go belly up quick.
Well, and honestly, good riddance. I think it's a shame that the content is gone. That's unfortunate, but I'm fine that there's just like, I'm fine that they're dead. I wish they could take Jezebel with them.
Any famous last words?
Yeah. So speaking of a lot of this stuff tangentially, I am writing a Substack piece as a rebuttal to 2 episodes of my favorite 2 podcasts, which are now we've talked about both of them on the show.
Mhm.
Blocked and Reported, it's Katie Herzog and Jesse Sinkel's podcast, and A Special Place in Hell, which is Sarah Hayter and Megan Daum. And they both recently ran episodes. They did episodes. One of them was with Sam Harris, who I am no fan of. Or I mean, there's certain things I admire, but I have a lot to say about him. And so on both of these episodes, they kept using the term conspiracy theory in its most pejorative sense, which didn't really surprise me, but it disappointed me because they're so acute and nuanced and sharp in their discussion of other topics. So I replied in the comment section to the Special Place in Hell Sam Harris episode, I don't know, it must have been 15 times. I must have written 7,000 words or something outrageous, and finally I was just like, holy shit, this is seeming obnoxious and rude. Let me just try to organize this better. I mean, I didn't think they would notice. I didn't think the hosts would notice. I thought people in the comment section would just be like, oh, we either want to read this or we don't. And I'm very dismayed at their what I consider to be a really irresponsible sort of knee-jerk defaulting to a use of a term that's been weaponized. And so I have academic references, I have medical references I'm going to just post in my response. I mean, again, I don't know that they'll see this. I'm tagging them. And I'm conflicted because I don't want to appear to be like I'm doing it to get attention. I'm not posting the link on their comments. I'm not doing that. I will probably send them all messages via Substack saying, hey, just so you know, this is running. If you care to comment, cool, but I'm not expecting, they have no reason to comment on something at my level of, with my few subscribers, right? And I'm torn because it's well, we're fans of these shows. We would like to engage in dialogue with these shows, but I don't want to appear like some person who's I want to get your attention. I want you to talk to me kind of a thing. So I'm just just going to post it, let the chips fall where they may. And at least it'll be out there. Maybe they'll look up some of the links I have, because I think using conspiracy theory, well, I was just going to say, I think using the term conspiracy theory as shorthand for all the things that wherever I happen to draw the line as unthinkable and just, so therefore you're stupid and mentally ill and you're just completely unreasonable and irrational for even imagining such a silly thing. I think that snickering tone was all over those podcasts from people who have been very, very clear-minded in identifying all the excesses of the medicalization of trans. So I'm just offering a respect. And dude, these are my favorite show. I love these shows. So I said in the piece, I'm kind of an Ombuds fan.
Do you think that how much response? What's your dream scenario with this?
I mean, the dream is just to have some sort of, to have them be adjust their use of the term and go, oh, hey, we looked this up and sort of get I want to be like the guy, what's his name? Daryl Joseph. I want to be like the guy who collects KKK hoods from people in this.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
So
yeah.
So I think his name is Daryl. He's in Catherine Brodsky's new book, which I haven't read yet, but
Daryl Davis.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're so I wanna collect Jesse Single's hood because he's a conspiracy theorist. I guess I would love to be that person. Hey, give me your, and so the people in media, especially really sharp people who I think are doing amazing work, right? Don't fall into that same rut because they don't fall for the okie doke in other places. Why should they necessarily fall for it here? They have, their minds are too nimble for that, and they have chosen not to. Like, they've chosen, basically, I'm saying they're being kind of lazy. So, but I'd say it very politely. I don't even know that they'll notice. I would love it if they noticed and were like, oh yeah, you know, somebody, a fan sent us, they don't have to name me or anything. A fan sent us and we looked into it, and there were some good points, and maybe we'll be more open. I'm not even trying to sell them on like COVID jab skepticism or 9/11 truth, because Sam Harris conflates all those things. And it's a very common mistake. And again, I worked on Dr. Wendy Painting's doctoral dissertation, which became the book on the Oklahoma City bombing, Crisis in the Heartland of the Real. And this is a playbook, right? When you collapse all these non-official narratives into one container and everybody in there is nuts, that's a really dangerous thing to be propagating from people who I feel should and do know better. Did I answer your question about the dream scenario? Are you suggesting that you think I'm chasing clout by doing this?
Well, we all are all the time. I mean, but that's not the point I was about to make. By the way, Sup Nuke, also a guy got to get on the show, media vet. But yes, I do think you are chasing clout to a certain degree. I do, and I think, look, I think you should take it all the way. Email them.
Yeah, that's what I'm planning, and I tag them in Substack. You can tag individual people, and they know about it. You know, and look, I would love to have conversations with people like this. You and I are fans of these people. I don't think my platform is at the point that it is developed enough for them to think it's worth it. But down the road, like in like 5 years or a year or two, would I absolutely love to hash this out and other things with people such as them? Of course. I mean, I love what they do, right? And I think that would, you know, if I'm being immodest, would be a great conversation. I don't see that as practical right now. So it's like, I'm concerned that they will receive it as like an attempt from like an overzealous fan to try to get in their sphere and talk to them. It's like what Shannon Sharpe said. He can't have Mike Epps on his show now because it sends the message that all you got to do to get on my show is say I'm gay on your stand-up and have it go viral, and then
I don't think that's quite the same. I think this is like, all right, you have a criticism. You're a really good writer, so I think you'll lay it out clearly. And I think if, you know, it's not like you're a neophyte or just a random person. I think you lay it out, you offer it up to them, and I think that they'd be smart to take you up on it to at least, you know, even if they disagree with the criticism, they should at least have the conversation with you. Because I think that's one of the, especially, you know, I haven't looked at a special place, listened to this, a special place in hell, but I have heard Megan Daum elsewhere. And I've listened to Bar Pod, Blocked and Reported, a good amount. I did just chuckle at their personals Substack post that they had out a couple days ago. And look, I think, especially on Bar Pod, what they rail about is places and people who are obsessed with dogma.
Mm-hmm. They're culture critics.
Yeah. So they should at least be willing to engage on a criticism of their own dogma.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be a little much to ask for due to all this audience capture stuff that we've talked about today.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be my hope. And also in this world of engagement, I think that's the smart way to go. If someone thinks that the whole Vice thing we talked about earlier, or anything we discussed today, they got a problem with it, they should speak up about it, and we should engage. And
Yeah, but
that's
we're at
one
a
of the things
point
that I
where
enjoy. But that's one of the
yeah,
things that I enjoy about that show. That's what they do. They see an issue and they engage on the issue when they disagree with it. I don't know how they handle the inverse off the top of my head.
yeah, and I'm not trying to antagonize them. I'm being very careful. So it's interesting because I'm doing the piece in reverse. It starts off just boop. Here's the episodes. Here's Jesse Single's post. Here's Sarah Hader's post. There's like 4 items. I have them all linked. Here's my general response. Here's some sources I would recommend for you and your production teams. Then I get into the layer of like specific things they said on these episodes, and I respond to those. And then at the very bottom, I explain why I'm a fan of the show, because I don't want to lose people through 2,000 words of throat clearing. So it's backwards. It goes straight to the point. Like, check this out, check this out, check this out, check this out, and then specifics, and then my, like, what I admire so much about their shows. And I don't need people to be convinced, for example, that the COVID vaccines are dangerous. What I do need people, and what I think is a public service, is for people to be as neutral as they can be and approach anything like this as if you are on a legal team and you're the head of a legal team, and you're just like, look, throw all the claims on the fucking table. We want to vet all these claims. Set aside your prejudice about the person making the claim first. We'll get there. We'll get into what their motives might be in a moment, but at least just on an empirical, logical basis, how plausible is this claim? Also, can you get into the mental exercise where you are, number one, saying, I don't know first, instead of, well, that's just so ridiculous, and only a crazy person would think it, because we have had instances quite recently of things that sounded crazy, and oh, by the way, here we are, right? But can you get into the mental Go ahead, sorry.
So the argument is that they're being dismissive.
Oh, absolutely. Very much in line with everyone else who uses that term to connote a form of mental illness. Really, they didn't come out and say it. Sam Harris was so I said in the comments, everything you're saying about people pejoratively about their mental state can be flipped on you. Your knee-jerk trust in institutions without even looking at the evidence is equally pathological. And so I'm saying people who engage, and they all made good points, right? They're like, yeah, if you go down this, there is a tendency for people who subscribe to conspiracies to go down this track. I think you and I have both seen this. There's something about it. And why are figures like Naomi Klein and Dr. Asim Malhotra and Neil Richardson, he's on GB News, they sort of start hanging with people who have a certain fragrance of right wing for some reason. I don't understand that. And I think that needs to be interrogated. But can you interrogate both equally? Can you just start, look, I'm an attorney. I'm hearing two sides of an argument. I don't know what the fuck is true. Can you bring yourself to that neutral point?
I can.
And
go ahead.
And just the mental exercise. Can you train yourself to disprove, like if you're imagining you're an attorney, right? So I'm going to go in there into court and lobby for this one perspective. Can you train yourself to do it on the opposite side, to check yourself and see if your argument holds up to a counter argument? That's what I would like to see people in general do. And I think their fans are bright enough to sort of want to digest information with some skepticism in all directions.
Here's my gut feeling about your argument. That in the question that I wanted to jump in on, it was about you said, okay, these people who subscribe to X conspiracy in this set of thought conspiracies, I don't think it quite applies, but thought, they tend to veer right. Once they encounter this, they veer right, correct?
And get more. It is a slippery slope. That is a fact. Mm-hmm.
Here's my guess. It's not. I think the inverse happened essentially as we talked about wokeness. When you come to a certain conclusion that X is true and X reshapes how you see the world, you want to go to where the food is. So, and it speaks to actually kind of once again the larger media questions we were talking about earlier about super serving a specific audience. You are super serve in this era. You can super serve yourself, and we also see that in terms of our population as we reshuffled ourselves over the last 20 years, and we're continuing to do that. Red states are getting redder, blue states are getting bluer. And I think that happens also with our content and with the people that we're around with our politics. We want that feedback loop that sounds like us, that feels like us. And that's the kind of thing we want to consume all the time. It does kind of speak to the failings of Vice because they assumed that they were that on a broad scale at a moment where you really can't be that for a broad scale.
Right. Totally.
So why these folks end up veering to the right is because they feel like that we're at this point where we are shunning anybody who disagree with us. We are closing our worlds off. We're not even we're like it's like whether it was Anthony Fauci or it's Donald Trump or it's whoever, we're just going to take whatever they say as gospel. We shouldn't, but that's the way that we're approaching the world more and more.
Yeah, and I actually misnomered. It's Naomi Wolf I was talking about, who now
I do that all the time,
and that's why Naomi Klein has her book Doppelganger. Naomi Klein, who also did not look at the evidence in her book one iota, and yet now has consigned Naomi Wolf as a right-wing fascist and equates jab skepticism with right-wing extremism, with fascism, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, for someone like me on the left who really admired her way of breaking down the mechanics of predatory global capitalism, she couldn't apply that same incisive lens to this situation, and a lot of people couldn't.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an Overton window situation, right?
Totally.
Where for those who don't know the term, and I would imagine everyone who's still here does, you can't really see outside of this window is impossible. It's beyond your belief system, your I think I've seen this happen, as people who I've been close to, they hear about a concept, whatever the concept. It's not even just like something as strident as vaccine conversation. When it's even something more simple, like I don't know. that the past gets fuzzy the further back you go. You know, you go back in history. We have an idea of how civilizations operated. I think it was a conversation I had about the Roman Empire or something. That we and one of the things I learned in recent years is that we think we know how it ended, but we don't really know how it ended.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's sort of
There's a ton
thing
of
that
shit
we
like that.
yeah, and the idea to some people, the idea that oh, these experts have throughout my life I've been told that X ended, X is this. I can't handle that X isn't that. And it causes a flip out.
Sure. I mean, one of the things I say in this piece is, you know, Iran Contra, if they had wanted to, could easily have been dismissed as a kooky conspiracy theory.
Sure.
And a lot of shit like that. Like so, and
or to go even a little bit more recent, I mean that the think about 9/11 so much, but I think about Iraq. I was thinking about the war in Iraq and the whole weapons of mass destruction. If you said that weapons of mass destruction, at that point I protested that war. I protested going to war at that time. I was in college, and if you questioned the idea of weapons of mass destruction, you were seen as a kooky lunatic. And we're talking just 20 years.
The most recent example is lab leak. It changed overnight.
Yeah. Sure.
All of a sudden it was okay for media pundits to say it, and it's like, whoa, man, you can move the goalposts now in a fucking basically a nanosecond.
Sure.
And nobody notices this.
Yeah.
And so and here's the other point I make. And I hesitate to use this term, but this is just ignorance, because I have a stack of papers that Wendy Painting had me read. And there is an academic named Lance DeHaven Smith, who has written papers from that way of discussing things. So this is erudite about the playbook. When governments want to suppress information, this is what they do. They brand people in this way, and then the media follows along, and it's so easy to fucking see. But it's we have a central intelligence agency that has told us what they do. They do this thing in other countries, right? How could we possibly just offhandedly presume, oh, well, they wouldn't do that here? And I also quote two very prominent people, the former editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine and the current editor-in-chief of The Lancet. So these are people who they weren't speaking specifically about vaccines, but they had very pointed words years ago about the corruption of medical studies. So you put all this together, and then you're gonna say people are losing their minds for filling in the gaps. That is really short-sighted. There's a huge blind spot, and I don't like the snickering. All of them were snickering about this and laughing. And I think Sam Harris is a particularly egregious case of somebody who is not reliable in discoursing on this at all. He's got a few really huge fuck-ups in his thinking. And I go even further, and I say that I say in my piece that if people like Sam Harris are at the helm of science, the human species is in deep shit. And I say that the new atheists are fundamentalists, and that the dark ages never ended. Yeah, I've always thought that. And that the dark age, I say Sam Harris is a televangelist for a certain kind of rationalist fundamentalism.
Wow.
I also call him a two-dimensional thinker in a three-dimensional world. And we never left the Dark Ages. People like Sam Harris took us into another one. That's
Wow.
my thesis more broadly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Whoa. I'll have to sit on that one for a while.
Yeah, especially the lapsed atheist that you are now. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to go deeper on that on another time. So
yeah, I didn't
Savvy
mean to
Reyes
grandstand.
Kokani,
Yeah.
no
This is
worries.
what I this is the impression I was trying not to create. Like when I saw my own comments in their thread, I was like, oh my God, I'm never gonna go on one of their live Zooms because they're gonna think like, oh my God, is that guy that's gonna corner us, and I'm not that person.
No, you should do it. I'd do it.
I would only do it if invited. I'm not going on one of their lives.
Okay.
Like, until
Yeah.
they know that I'm not gonna be that guy who's like,
Yeah.
oh, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah. That's why one of my hopes is to throw those kinds of things a little down the line, but we'll see.
Yeah,
So
we'll take all the crazies for now.
all right.
So
All right.
yeah, man, this was awesome. I'm actually glad you had technical difficulties so we
Yeah.
could do this, because I'd have been pissed at myself for not joining you on this one. But that's what I was planning on working on. That's what I was working on before.
Very cool.
And I'm treating
right.
it I'm treating it like if I was handing this in to a real stern editor or college professor that's like, yo, you need to fucking really make points, back them up. Whether they even care to read it or not, it's going to just be there as it has to be a solid piece of it has to be a solid paper.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Well, on that note, hey everybody, see you next Saturday.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Peace.